Hello, everybody, and welcome. So I think that I'm going to go ahead and get started because I think that we've got, we have an hour here, and as you will see, we've got some content to cover, but the majority of what we want to be able to do in this is, hi, Hanmei, is to be able to open it up for questions from you. We're just talking, my little panel here and I, about how a creative application and a creative opportunity like this has so many different ways that you can go, so many different areas to explore. And so we want to make sure that we are here for you to answer any questions that you might have. So, like I said, I'm just going to jump in here. I don't have too many, visuals to show. I'm going to do a little bit of a website share in a second, but my name is Erica Reif. I am the executive director of AFO. I keep saying that I'm new, but I am closing in on my 2-year anniversary, so I guess I'm not quite new anymore. But still getting used to our different programs and seeing who we have involved in our community, wonderful people like Kwong and Jen, who you'll hear from today too. So all of my experiences and knowledge that I can share are kind of from that logistical standpoint and from the organizational standpoint. And then Kwong and Jen have that actual experience of getting the award and being able to talk about how their application process went. And then they also both serve on our selection committee, so they are able to bring in some perspectives of what we look for and how we judge all of the different applications. So a little bit of history lesson for you. So how many of you have been aware of this award prior to this year? If you want to just do the emoji, raise your hand here. Awesome. I want to know, are we presenting new information or presenting information that people have already seen? Okay, about half and half, which is fantastic. So I wanted to, give a little bit of that background because I think it's definitely pertinent to our conversation today. So this has been an award that we give out from AFO since 2001. But it is in conjunction with and in partnership with the Architecture Foundation, or no, we are the Architecture Foundation, with the Oregon Community Foundation, who partnered with Evera and Janet M. Bailey to start this fund back in the 80s. And so they created this fund, and these are the words that they put to it: for the preservation and betterment of the art and science of architecture in the state of Oregon. So that is the reason why the fund exists. And what OCF realized was that they didn't really have the expertise within their network and their group of people to administer this fund. And so we partnered with them to basically be the administrators of that fund in the form of this scholarship. It started out as a $20,000 award. Shortly after that, it jumped up to $25,000, and it remained there for many, many years, for over a decade. And just last year, we started looking at, okay, what are we talking about in terms of the cost of living increases, of inherent privilege that needs to be available to people to take on a huge project like this with compensation that might not actually equal what the cost of taking that time would be. And so we inquired with the Oregon Community Foundation again to say, hey, could we increase our funds and could we double it? And so this year, for coming in 2025, we now are giving away $50,000 to the fellow who receives the award. So what we're hoping to see, this is untested data that we're going to be gathering at this point, but what we're hoping to see is that this allows for more people to be available. Yes, thank you, Kwong. This is a celebration moment. That this allows for more people to have access to this award that might not have previously been able to take something on like this. So we're just really excited to see what comes of this increase in funding. So that's a little bit of the background of kind of how we got here and what we're doing. So what I'd like to do now is to share share my screen and just give you a little bit of a walkthrough of the application process in case you haven't done this before and are, want to get a little crash course on where things are and how you can better navigate that. So just going to make sure that I have all of you still visible on my screen here. Okay, lovely. So this is the AFO website. So hopefully you're all so familiar with it. But if you go to programs and then in the drop-down menu to fellowships here, and then up at the top, if you don't know already, we have two fellowships. We have the VEB Fellowship, and then just a couple of years ago, we started the Pat Sanchez Women's Fellowship. That is another opportunity. So if you're interested in that, please let me know, or you can hang out on our website and learn a little bit more about that yourselves. But right here is where you can click and they'll drop you down to specifically the VEB Fellowship information. So you can read more about that increase in funding that we just talked about. But the main links that I want to point you to is, of course, here is the link to the IFP, the invitation for proposals. That will take you to this PDF here, and that has all of this kind of detailed information for you to peruse in here. So definitely, if you haven't already, take your time learning about what we're looking for, learning a little bit more about our past fellows, and then what the kind of rubric or all the different questions that we'll be asking of applicants. All of that information is in here, along with the deadline to apply, which is Sunday, October 27th. And then, of course, my information here. So there's a link in here, as well as the link on our website that will take you to the platform Submittable, which is where we accept all of our applications here. One note: to submit anything onto Submittable, you do have to make an account. So just be aware that that will be a part of your application process. And then this is where it'll take you through all of those different questions. So please feel free to, copy and paste the questions from the IFP here and work on them, in a Word document or whatever works best for you. And then you can copy and paste them over into the submittable form. So that's where that lives. A little bit more on here. If you go to eligibility and requirements, there's a lot of information in here about what those eligibility requirements are. One of the questions that we did get in the past was, what does a schedule, timeline, work plan look like? So this year we did provide a link in here for you to be able to see some examples of past submissions that, I think pretty clearly articulated how their work plan was looking. So you can use that as a guideline, but as Kwong will talk about, none of these are the only, template that you all have to follow. These are merely just suggestions to be able to lay out what it is you'll be looking at as part of your project here. So the only other couple of things that I wanted to kind of draw attention to, and again, all of this is listed in the various different places that I just talked about. I'm going to stop sharing so that I can focus a little bit more on these questions. So a couple of things, they haven't necessarily changed, but they are areas that we have found people to have many questions on in the past. Is describing who your project is meant to impact. So in the past, we have maybe opened it up and said it has to be everything for everybody. And that is just clearly a very, very high stakes task to try to take on. So we did a little bit of wordsmithing, and we are going to ask you in that one question to talk about, define it from you. Who is your project meant to impact? Is it you as a design building professional and what your identity is, what your community is? Is it the building profession as a whole? Is this a tool that other AEC and design building professionals could access to better their professional journey? And or, all of these can be a component of who you impact. Is it a specified community? Is it a community that you are a part of that perhaps the entirety of the design building professional or the community at large, not everybody is a member of, but it would be highly impactful for you to, work on your project as it impacts that community. So just being able to clearly define who the person or people are that you're trying to impact and how that impact is actually going to manifest itself through your project. Another question that we get is about the dissemination of this. It is very, very much meant to be something that people can benefit from. One of the people that we want to benefit from this, of course, is you. And one of those ways in which it could benefit you is being able to get up and talk about it. So the easiest thing and the thing that kind of everybody participates is that we have our annual fellowship celebration. That is the event that we recognize the person who is going to be the next year's fellow. So whoever we select for this fellowship, we will recognize them in the 2025 fellowship celebration. It'll be in January or February. But it also is the opportunity for the past year's fellow to do their presentation to the audience. So that's when they talk about what it was that they did, what their findings were, how they shared it with people, and kind of what the next steps are for them. So if that is your dissemination avenue, fantastic. There are also people who do maybe a public exhibition out of their work. There are people who create, again, kind of a guide or a book or something that is available to other people to get and to read and to use as a resource. So there are a lot of different avenues, but we're going to ask you to define that however it may be. Just know that it could just be that you're going to do your presentation at the fellowship reception. The last one of those nuggets that I want to kind of delve into a little bit is who is eligible. And we've kind of danced around this because it also is really kind of difficult to define who is the primary group of people that we're looking to apply for this award. So in the past, we have used terms like mid-career. We've used which is very hard to define. You know, there are some people that can be mid-career and then change careers completely and be very new to the AEC profession. So they might be kind of mid-life or mid-age, but is that the kind of area in which you have a lot of expertise or experience within the AEC industry? That's kind of up for you to define. We've also kind of swung in the other direction and said point of inflection in your career. That also can be a little bit hard to define, and maybe something that this fellowship would cause an inflection of your career, but maybe you're not ready for that inflection without it. So the way that we really delved into it this year is fellows build on their experiences, inquisitions, and observations in their professional and personal lives to explore new ways of thinking. So we really want you to be able to come to this with experience, with thoughts, questions that have come up over your years of working in the industry or being a member of your community that you can build upon. So we are really looking for some years of experience, let's say. How many years, that's up for you to define. That's not something that we're going to be judging on, but we do want it to be something that people are, you know, maybe at that point in their career where there's not a direct avenue to explore new things, and this could be the avenue in which you're able to explore those new things. So as vague as all of those things are, maybe I added more confusion to you, but hopefully that kind of provides a little bit of meat around some of those questions that we get quite often. So with that, I am going to stop talking and I'm going to turn it over to Kwong to be able to share a little bit more about his experience again as a V. I'll give you a little bit of an intro, Kwong. So Kwong was a VEB fellow in what year?
2016.
2016. That led to him being more and more involved in AFO, and now he is on the board of AFO. And he is also the chair of the VEB committee. So this has really been his avenue to be more involved with AFO, and then has led to this leadership position within AFO as well. So I'm going to turn it over to him to talk a little bit more about what his experience was in applying for this and then using the funds. And then we'll also hear from Jen, who was the I'm not remembering any of my years here. What was the year that you received it?
2019.
2019, a pivotal
Yeah.
year for many people. We didn't know it yet. Um, so they're going to talk a little bit more about their experience, and then we'll turn it over to you all to ask specific questions that you might have as you're getting ready to apply. So with that, Kwang, take it away.
Okay. Well, thank you, Erica. So I'll be showing the materials that I used to apply for the fellowship with. Now, I'm a little bit on the fence with that, but as we talked about, but what I would like to kind of foreground this with is that I think from the beginning, when I first found out about the VEB award, I was amazed. I think this is an amazing opportunity for the field of architecture. I had applied for a number of awards in architecture for many years, and I think the AFO VEB is one of the best awards nationally. And it's, I think, a little known award, but it's an amazing opportunity. At that time, it was, specifically addressed to mid-career architectural professionals. And there just isn't another award like that. And it can be transformational. And that's why I got involved. That's why I love to be involved with this award. I think it is an amazing award. So I'm very happy to see all the people who are interested in it. And I'm very, I think, humbled to show what I applied with it, but hopefully it can just serve as a point of inspiration, and that it leads each person who's applying to think about what inspired them in architecture in the first place. Oops, I'm showing the wrong screen. And what hopefully can lead to a really amazing application for how to use the amazing opportunity that the VEB Fellowship provides. So again, I applied in 2016, which meant that I served at the fellowship in 2017. But at the time, I was working full-time at Lever Architecture. One of the questions that we often get is, can I do this if I have another job? And the answer from my point of view is definitively yes. I was working full-time at Lever Architecture, but I also had a one-year-old at the time, or two-year-old by the time. So I was, I built the proposal to kind of fit around the priorities in my life, which had to do with, of course, family and profession. But that being said, when I got to Portland and when I started working at Lever, one of the things that inspired me was the history of material innovation in the Pacific Northwest. And at Lever, we were working with mass timber a lot, and the history around material innovation, specifically around timber in the Pacific Northwest, was amazing. And everybody talked about how the Pacific Northwest was that center for material innovation, specifically around timber products around that time. But the other thing that the Pacific Northwest was known for, or perhaps a little less known for, was actually the materials around composites, such as carbon fiber, because of perhaps Boeing's factory a little bit north of here. So the Pacific Northwest had this amazing history of material innovation, and I wanted to tap into that a little bit, in part because I had experience working on buildings with composites and advanced materials as well. So this is a project that I worked on right before I started at Lever, and this was built using aerospace and nautical technologies for architecture. So that experience, along with the kind of the inspiration for the Pacific Northwest, were what led me to propose something that had to do with this new kind of material technology. This is the Apple Theater in Cupertino that was built on the Apple's new campus, and it's a carbon fiber building. It's a carbon fiber roof without any columns or any walls at all. It is just a thin and light roof that is supported entirely by glass. And this building just came out, so I knew that there was interest around talking about material technology at that time. So I wanted to research this, but my perspective from an architect was also that I didn't want to just research and write, but I love the idea that things embody ideas. So I want to also produce something. So my proposal ended up being about then taking that research and creating something. Because the award was only $25,000 at that time, I thought that I had to limit the scope of what I could create and make, and I settled upon the idea of a chair. Now, chairs, if you get into it, you know that there's a history of material innovation and exploration, such as Mies van der Rohe's tubular steel chairs, or the molded plywood chairs of the Eameses, but there's this rich history of using chairs as vehicles for design and material exploration. So basically, my VEB proposal was to do this. It was to research advanced materials, design and build a chair based on that research, and then as the component for dissemination was to publish an article. That's what I proposed to do based upon my particular experience and my inspiration in design and architecture at the time. One of the things that I tapped into in order to kind of deploy and use those funds was to actually attend a conference in Germany around advanced materials. This was at the University of Stuttgart. So I was able to take some time with those funds, take a little bit of unpaid leave and go to Germany for a week to go to this conference. They were doing all this amazing research at that time around composite materials as well as automation. This is a pavilion that's built with drones and robots, as you can see. There's also this history of buildings in Europe that use composite materials and advanced materials. Like this is the Stedelijk Museum in Amsterdam. Some of you may have been visited there, but it's I think it's a 200-meter seamless facade that was created. And then I started to design that chair. And these are some sketches that I initially started with to begin to build something that I'd always wanted to do, which was a chair. And I used composite materials. I also took the funds for it and used it to begin the process of fabrication and design exploration. And because any of you who've worked or designing chairs, that it's an unbelievably unforgiving design exercise. A couple of inches here or there is the difference between a good chair and a bad chair, and you might be able to tell from the expression on my face in this one that I was not satisfied with that first iteration of a chair. But luckily, I was able to continue to iterate and design, and these are some renderings that I generated for the design of that chair. And continuing fabrication meant that I eventually ended up with a chair that I was happy with through some versions of those iterations. And this was the final project, the product of that chair. Now, like I also talked about, I want to write about this. So I wrote a series of articles about the process of designing, fabricating, and the implications behind certain material technologies that led to this chair. I published a couple of articles on Architects newspaper around innovation and materials. And then, I was, to be honest, not quite satisfied. So I continued this research and I actually developed all this further research into a full-length book that was published by Berkhauser in 2020. This is the first book in the world around composite materials in architecture. And it was all started from the research that was kicked off by the VEB Fellowship. So I'm very serious when I say that I think this is a transformational and incredible award that I was able to do so much with. And it, was a blend of my personal experience as well as the opportunities that were afforded by the VEB. So I am super excited to see the applications here. I'm super excited about the award being doubled to $50,000. That is just more opportunity. So very excited to see everybody. Sorry, this was blending into my next part, which is about the work that I'm currently doing, but I'm not going to share that at the moment. I wanted to kick it off or turn it over to Jennifer, who's going to talk about her application and her work during the VEB, and then we'll gather after, I think, to talk about the selection process a little bit, both Jen and I. So Jen, to you.
Thank you. Yeah, and it's great to see everybody here. And it's wonderful actually to hear this recap because it is such a personal journey, and every submittal that we've seen or person that I've met that has submitted their idea. It's just so unique. So this really is a grant that I believe is a transformational, pivotal thing for somebody's career. And for me, I was the fellow in 2019, but I did submit for 4 different times. So that's part of it too, is just refining maybe your pitch. And when I initially had that kind of germ of an idea, I I basically just kind of brain dumped and sent it. It wasn't very organized or rationalized. But over the years, I think just actually doing that exercise helped me to ultimately get to where I was selected. So the idea that I went with, previous to 2019, for at least a decade, I had been and still am very active in our local AIA chapter. And at the time, there was a committee that was specifically focused on women in the profession. It has since morphed into a larger, our EDI committee. But at the time, it was women in the profession. And I want to say in like 2014, that kind of timeframe, there was the first survey of architecture, of the profession of architecture, that was put out by Equity by Design, and not just for women, but just for everybody. But what it showed was a big gap between kind of in the profession of how many people were graduating. So it was like basically parity, right? 50-50. But then there were so many fewer women in the profession. And that's where that missing 30% came from. So my interest was really kind of diving into that and figuring out, okay, what are the issues, and where on a local level could we, start implementing kind of actionable efforts towards curbing that and towards retaining talented people, talented women, and underrepresented groups that was shown in that survey to be, on the outs. How do we support that? So as I dove into my research as well, I realized that there was a disparity between the education and knowledge around construction in women in the profession, that the survey actually pointed to as an element that was holding women back from positions of design in firms. So that was one of the things that I wanted to dive into as well, and use myself as kind of a guinea pig. So similarly to Kwan and his journey towards the chair, which I love, I decided to use some of the money to do a week's kind of immersive program at Yestermorrow in Vermont, where it was a group of women basically learning how to build a shed and all the components around tools and building. And it seemed really simple, but at the end of the day, it was not. It was a great program, a great opportunity. And it allowed me to come back with further insight into where things should go. As Erica alluded to, it was kind of right at the beginning of the pandemic. So there were, goals and things that I had wanted to achieve that had a lot to do with like face-to-face classes, events, lessons that really did not pan out. But I think overall, the things that I had wanted to research, definitely the connections that you make that you don't even know that you're, who you're going to meet or where things are going to lead. It was definitely a pivotal time in my career. So, and since then I've used a lot of those connections and information to move on to my own practice. So yeah, it's interesting to see where everything leads after having been a fellow. So that's my story.
It's a great story. Lots of time and place things, right? And then continuing in that regard. Yeah,
exactly.
Great. Well, thank you both for sharing about your specific experiences. And I know just very, very high level of that, but I think that hopefully that gives our audience a sense of just what prompted ideas. And I love, Jen, that you applied what you said 4 times, right? This is, go
4 times.
ahead.
And I did get feedback from some of the people that had reviewed. And one of the things that was commented was about being too ambitious. So that's something. And I know, you know, with these extra funding, perhaps that can be kind of alleviated, but it's it feels perhaps like a generous fund of money, but you really have to be conscientious about what you can actually do with your time. And that was another thing too about I didn't necessarily want to take time away from work. I just wanted to kind of work on it during the weekends and thought perhaps I could do that. I also had 2 young kids. And at the end of the day, I had to kind of reconsider that and just carve out certain, you know, like every Friday or something. I just had to be more conscientious about the time that I gave it because it was so, but it really depends throughout the timeline of it, throughout that year, what time you need to give to your project.
Certainly. Yeah, and things can be adjusted based on feedback, and you can apply again in future years. I really appreciate that transparency that we do see people who apply multiple times, have made adjustments, maybe they go in a completely different direction. So I do see the questions coming in, and I promise that we will get to those. I want to cover one more thing in our kind of little program here, and then we'll open it up to questions. So as I mentioned, both Kwong and Jen have graduated from their fellow positions and now serve on the selection committee. There are more people than just them, so if your application doesn't make it through, it's not any one person's fault. But they have brought, I think, a really unique and an important perspective to the selection committee process because of their experiences as fellows and knowing things like how ambitious can people be and how realistic are some of these different elements of cost of materials, cost of travel, cost of, you know, just supplementing what might be unpaid leave, that kind of thing. So I would love for the two of you to share any additional insights about what serving on the selection committee has meant for you, and maybe any nuggets of information for the potential applicants here of things that they should know about the selection process.
Sure, I can start. So I think for a little transparency on the selection committee, the committee is appointed by the AFO, and it draws from all of the professions that the AFO aims to serve. So those are professional architects, professional engineers, developers, contractors. So it's a fairly broad community composed of the same the same community that the AFO aims to serve, and specifically the VEB. So that is, I think, some of it. And then what happens is that, those professionals gather and we discuss basically the potential applications to serve the purpose of the VEB's initial charter, of course, but also the AFO's mission. So that is to inspire and to educate and to engage the community about the built environment and about design and architecture and construction and the process that turns ideas and the community that we are into the built environment that we live in physically. That's what we're discussing. And it's a very, very broad topic, as you guys can probably glean. And there's this, kind of this just crazy balance that we have to kind of, walk between, the the kind of the mission that AFO has, as well as kind of like making sure that the award can be broad and to serve the potential, unforeseen and creative applications that each person brings. So it's difficult to say there's like any one thing that a proposal lacked or didn't have, or why one was over another. It's because, we're selecting within a pool of applicants to serve what is a very creative and very, broad and rich source of influences and impact. So there isn't that much we can really kind of convey, but just to give you like transparency, that is, what we're composed of. The selection committee is the professionals, made up of the professionals that we're looking to serve. And then we discuss, the potential for each submitted application to do and to impact as broadly and as powerfully as possible. Beyond any specificity on that, it's like really difficult because it is often a kind of a very, vigorous and, lively debate that the committee has in choosing these things. It's a fun time, but it's also, I want to say that we feel the responsibility of, the privilege of being able to select something. And I don't think it's something that we take lightly. It is a privilege. And we hope that we are able to kind of inspire and engage the community with this award that was bestowed as well as possible. But yeah, we're just happy that there's interest. We fully believe in the potential of it. If there's any other questions about the committee, I'd be happy to try and answer them. But I know, Jen, you have things that you want to say as well.
I was just going to say that in terms of the submittal and something that is a consistent throughout the people that have been, or the projects that have kind of risen to the top, is a very clear articulation of your why, right? Why are you doing this? And can you eloquently kind of tie back to that within each of the main questions within the submittal? So sometimes that you see submittals where the why kind of shifts throughout because there are a multitude of ideas or ways to kind of get to kind of your main nugget. But I guess I would just strongly suggest if you could kind of articulate like your elevator pitch as to what you're, trying to do with this at the end of the day. And again, like, who is it benefiting? And clearly articulate that. It's one of the biggest the biggest things that you could do, and then ideally things will kind of fall into place from that.
Yeah, I think that's a great point, Jen. And I think, we really strive to have diversity within our selection committee, people coming from different backgrounds, both lived experience as well as what their professional journeys have taken them. But, just by nature of the sheer amount of diversity that we have within our community, that we don't have one person from every community that is serving on that. And so we also look for people to define that for us, the purpose of a foundation, and to send money out into the community in this way is to trust you as the expert of your community, of your experiences, of your inquisitions and allow you to go forth into the world to solve those problems or to explore those different inquiries. So we need your definitions with them. We need to be able to understand the problem, the why, like Jen said, the community within your words. And, you know, we've got character limits, and we have those things that really necessitate brevity, and less brevity, but more so just clear and concise information to be able to share. So really working on conveying that information, I think, just helps the group understand that we trust you as the experts to go forth and to make that change. Okay, wonderful. Thank you both. You're still here on the in the hot seats for some question answering, but I wanted to get into I'll answer the questions in the chat, but also feel free to just raise your hand and we can get into your questions as well. So Bonnie, I think you were typing this while Jen was talking, so I think that this is directed to Jen. But you said, what was your timeline like and what was your deliverable? So Jen, do you want to shed a little bit more light onto your project?
Yeah, so my timeline was the first, I should step back. My intent was to basically like create an online journal of the whole experience on a website that would then, after the fact, be tied to activities and events locally that people could connect with. So that was kind of my overarching, I guess, deliverable. And then I had mapped it out that the first, I would say like the first 6 months of the project was really researching, documenting, and then just interviewing both people locally. You know, like I interviewed professionals and people at that were teaching, and then I found people online and I connected with them. So it's just like a lot of research and discussion. And then the final part was actually going to Yes Tomorrow and doing the actual like immersive building event and then journaling on that. So those were that was my deliverable, with the intent that the website would kind of live on and could be active, you know, beyond. So was there another question or no? That was it.
It was about your timeline. Did you?
Oh yeah.
Yeah.
That was the timeline.
Great. Yeah, and I will. Oh, go ahead, Kwang.
Oh, good.
Well, I will add, you know, again, this kind of speaks to the broadness of the eligibility of the award. We have had fellows who have taken 20 years to deliver the final product. I'm referring to John Cava's book on John Yon. You know, so there is, there is the timeline only that is kind of up to you. There is no specific requirements for a timeline. It just has to do with your specific proposal and your specific idea. And I think there is a wide variety that may be warranted. I'll tell you my timeline. Again, like I was a professional with a kid, I wanted it to last exactly a year. The other thing that I think, and this goes into some of the technicalities of the award will be granted to you if you win in a certain fiscal tax year, and that will have tax implications that have to do with how much you actually end up being able to use. So that is something to consider as well when you're thinking about your timeline. But you will get taxed on the award if you win it, and that does have an impact on what you're actually allowed to do. So I think there's, again, a broad range of possibilities. We don't specifically delimit any range of timelines. It's a little bit up to you.
Yeah, and I saw another question from Kim a little bit further down about AFO supporting, and the example that you have, I think, touches on this exactly. Jen's came in through COVID. What was the support, or at least the flexibility? And I just want to say on that question and on other questions that you might have, we are really flexible. We are not, the dissemination as a result of this is something that we really, really want and encourage, and again, count on that following year fellowship celebration to be able to talk about what you're doing. So a year later, being able to report in some capacity, but that does not mean that a lot of people's work is quote unquote done after a year, right? We just got an email. We reached out to one of the recipients a couple of years ago, and he said, "Hey, it's been a few years, but I finally got a show in New York City that I'm about to show my photography work here." So the in comparison to maybe some other granting organizations that require a very kind of strict report out at the end of the year, AFO doesn't do that. We are here to allow you to have the opportunity to go out and explore and spend the money in the best way that you see fit. And another example is that one of our recipients, a couple from last year, come fellowship reception time, they were completely inundated with other opportunities, with some art shows coming up, and it was clear that doing the AFO fellowship celebration was going to be exhausting to them, and that's not what we're here to do either, right? This is all supposed to be positive, generation of ideas and exposure to what you're doing. So we are very flexible in making sure that this works for you in whatever way it might. And as we've talked about, these are creative endeavors. The definition of that is different for every single person. So we, if anything, this is kind of like an induction. If you're not already a really active member of our community, this is an induction into our community and into the AFO, kind of, for lack of a better word, family. And we are so close with all of our fellows, and being able to stay in constant contact with them to see what works best for them. So, okay, moving on. So Bonnie also asked if you can submit multiple ideas, or can you talk to someone to see which idea best matches. Again, not something that I think we have a strict rule around. If you want to submit multiple ideas, just know that everybody, we have a panel of human beings, and so I think that what they'll be asking about, and I think both Jen and Kwong have alluded to this, is that this is really meant to be something that's very meaningful to you, and something that you have really been, inquiring about or thinking about for a few years, that you would like to be able to explore deeper. And so that being a part of your application, if there's kind of a lot of different directions or something that have kind of just come up, I think that will probably show in the application. So, but that being said, more than happy to have a chat about, what one sounds more appealing to what we're working on. So feel free to reach out to me or to Kwong or to Jen to be able to talk about that a little bit more. You also asked, does everyone get feedback? If you're upon request, some people, want to hear no, yes, and then kind of just move along. And we are always available for feedback afterwards, should you want it. So as soon as we email out to everybody what our decision is, you can respond to that and say, hey, I'd love to jump on the phone and hear more about my application, and we can provide that. So great questions there. I also see from Roseanne, is there a digital archive or record of previous fellows' presentations, exhibits? I love the idea. There's not. A lot of people have done so many different kinds of projects, and it's just not something the AFO has worked to really capture in an easily accessible way. There's, some like the ideas that were born that then turned into the Winter Lights Festival. You can go and explore the Winter Lights Festival, but we don't readily have that available on the website. You can see the list of previous recipients, but not necessarily every project related to them. I will say that next year is the 25-year anniversary of the VEB award. And so we're going to look to do some kind of celebration around it. But what that actually looks like is to be determined. So thank you for the prompt, and we will absolutely work on that. Okay, Kim, I think we answered your question about the support there, but we are always able to support. You also asked, do the funds strictly have to be used up to 100%, and do they need to be used up by December 21st, 2025? No, I would say you can, there are some people, again, some projects might be derailed, or maybe you want to go to as part of your project, you want to go to a conference that is only being held in 2026. But I think that being able to, again, deliver that presentation at the year mark will be meaningful, to be able to talk about what you accomplish with that money within the year. But there are plenty of people who have, spilled over into future years to be able to, spend their time and money in the way that works best for them.
Yeah, I think if I might add, logistically,
ahead,
I think it'll be a little bit clear. Like, what happens if you win the award? You just get a check, and that check is up to you to do whatever you will with. There's no requirements for reporting dates. There's no conditionals to receive disbursements of funds. There's no post, AFO doesn't claw anything back if you don't deliver something. There's no, so it really is a kind of a wonderfully broad and kind of flexible award. It's like, if your proposal is accepted, you get a check, you get the support of the community, but there's nothing official. There's no mechanisms to claw anything back or conditional releases. It's up to you to kind of do, it's your prerogative, and you're the kind of the author of that proposal. So the FO fully trusts the applicant to do as they are proposing to do, and that's it. So all of the technicalities around that, there's kind of no strings attached in a weird way, and that's a really wonderful and also a really kind of amazing privilege to be given.
Yeah. Yes, everything that Kwang said. I think that this is the direction that a lot of funding organizations are at least aspiring to be, and it has been wonderful to see. And I can't take credit for this, although the philosophy is very strongly held by me as well. But the philosophy that get the money out there, get the money into the hands of community members who are working to make a difference, and trust those community members to use it as they see fit. So that's one that AFO subscribes to, and hopefully, can be champions of what you all are working towards. So I hope that you all have that date marked on your calendar. As hopefully some of most of our big, this is just from a logistical perspective, our big, when is the announcement date here? I'll jump into that really quickly for you, Heather. The announcement date will be, it's not kind of official. We usually try to announce it in December once the decision has been made. Late November, early December, before the beginning of the year. But the big kind of, I think, again, public display of what to expect is at that fellows reception in the new year. So that's kind of what we're working on. And what we usually ask from the recipient is a bio of sorts, describe who you are so that we can introduce you to the community. And then also just the description of your project, which can be largely adapted from your application itself. And you can see on the website this year's fellows and see kind of what we put together and what that announcement looks like. Bonnie, great question. How do we reach out to you? So I personally, my email is on the IFP and all the application materials. Jen and Kwang, if you are available to pop your emails into the chat, we can put them in there, and people can have that information to reach out to you. As I was saying, our big fundraiser, which I hope that you all are attending or paying attention to in some capacity, is on October 10th. It is our Honored Citizen event where we celebrate the lifetime accomplishments of an individual or an organization. This year will be about John Schleining, who has many different accolades, but I think my favorite is the designer of the airport carpet, the famous iconic airport carpet. But he did a lot of other incredible things too. That's on October 10th. So we are available to help, but I might have a little bit more availability after October 10th. So if I am a little bit tied up within, especially as we get closer and closer to October 10th, reaching out to Kwong and Jen, I mean, they are as knowledgeable, if not more so, because they have been doing this for longer than I am, or than I have. So please feel free to reach out to any one of us to be able to gather any more information. And especially if you have questions about your individual applications, we're happy to answer that as well. Awesome. Thank you all so much. Thank you to Jen and to Kwong, but also thank you all for your interest and for joining us here today. This is a great crowd, and we're really excited to see the next round of applications.